Tang Taiho had been living on the starship Eternal Frost for 6 months now. He was one of the few humans allowed to work on a galactic coalition ship. His job was simple. He fixed things: broken pipes, damaged wires, faulty machines. If something stopped working, Taiho made it work again. The ship was huge. It carried over 3,000 crew members from dozens of different alien species. Some had 4 arms, some had scales, some glowed in the dark. Taiho had learned to stop staring after the first week. Now nothing surprised him anymore. Well, almost nothing. The Valorians were different. They were tall and beautiful, with silver skin that seemed to shine under any light. Their eyes were pale blue, like frozen lakes. They moved with perfect grace, never rushed, never clumsy, and they were cold. Not just in personality, but actually cold. Their body temperature was so low that touching one could give you frostbite. Commander Yoon Ha-rin was the most famous Valorian on the ship. The crew called her the Cold Princess, but never to her face. She was strict, silent, and terrifying. In 6 months, Taiho had never seen her smile. He had never even seen her blink more than necessary. He tried to stay away from her. Everyone did. But the universe had other plans. It happened on a Tuesday, or whatever the space equivalent of Tuesday was. Taiho was carrying a heavy box of repair equipment through one of the narrow corridors on Deck 7. The box blocked most of his view. He walked carefully, counting his steps, trying not to bump into anyone. Then the ship shook. It was a gravity fluctuation. They happened sometimes when the ship passed through unstable space. The floor tilted. The walls seemed to spin. Taiho lost his balance completely. The box flew out of his hands. His feet slipped. He fell forward, arms reaching out to catch himself on something, anything. His hands found something soft. No, not soft, firm, round, cold. Time stopped. Taiho looked up slowly. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Standing in front of him was Commander Yoon Ha-rin. Her back was to him. She had been walking in the opposite direction when the gravity shifted, and his hands were on her bottom. Both hands, squeezing. Taiho pulled his hands back so fast he fell again, this time onto his back. He lay on the floor staring up at the ceiling, wondering if he should just stay there forever. Maybe if he didn't move, she would forget he existed. The corridor was silent. He could feel other crew members watching. A Krellian engineer had frozen mid-step, his 4 eyes wide with horror. A small cleaning robot had stopped moving, as if even machines knew something terrible had happened. Commander Ha-rin turned around slowly. Her face was the same as always. Cold, expressionless, perfect. But Taiho noticed something strange. Her silver skin had changed color slightly. There was a faint purple tint spreading across her cheeks. Was she blushing? No, impossible. Valorians didn't blush. Valorians didn't feel embarrassment. Valorians probably didn't even feel anything at all. She looked down at him. Her ice blue eyes locked onto his. Taiho opened his mouth to apologize, to beg for mercy, to explain that it was an accident, that the gravity had shifted, that he would never, ever, in a million years, intentionally touch a superior officer's bottom. Especially not a Valorian, especially not her. But before he could say anything, she spoke. Human. Her voice was cold and smooth like frozen metal. You will prepare yourself. You will report to my quarters at 2100 hours. Then she turned and walked away. Her footsteps made no sound. She moved like a ghost, disappearing around the corner without looking back. Taiho lay on the floor for a long time. The Krellian engineer slowly walked over and looked down at him. Human, the alien said, shaking his large head. You are dead. Taiho said nothing. He was pretty sure the alien was right. News traveled fast on a starship. By dinner time, everyone knew what had happened. The human engineer had touched Commander Ha-rin, not just touched, grabbed, squeezed, held on like his life depended on it. Taiho sat alone in the cafeteria staring at his food. He couldn't eat. His stomach felt like it was full of rocks. His friend Park Ji-won dropped into the seat across from him. Ji-won was another human engineer. He had messy hair, a crooked smile, and absolutely no sense of when to be serious. So, Ji-won said cheerfully, I heard you grabbed the cold princess's butt. It was an accident. Both hands? The gravity shifted. And you squeezed? I was trying to catch myself. Ji-won leaned back in his chair and laughed. It was not a kind laugh. It was the laugh of a man watching his friend walk towards certain death. She told me to come to her quarters tonight, Tae-ho said quietly. Ji-won stopped laughing. His face went pale. Oh no! What? What does that mean? Tae-ho, do you know anything about Valorian customs? Not really, they're cold. They don't talk much. They're scary. They're very serious about physical contact, Ji-won said. Like, extremely serious. Touching a Valorian without permission is one of the worst things you can do. It's either a terrible insult or what? Ji-won looked uncomfortable. Or it's a proposal. Tae-ho blinked. A proposal? Like marriage? Something like that. Look, I don't know the details, but you need to figure this out before tonight. Do some research. Talk to someone. Maybe write your will. After dinner, Tae-ho spent 3 hours searching through the ship's database for information about Valorian customs. What he found made things worse. Valorians did not touch each other casually. Physical contact was rare and meaningful. A touch on the hand was a sign of deep trust. A touch on the shoulder meant family bond. A touch on more private areas was either a deadly insult requiring immediate execution, or it was a formal request for courtship. The database did not explain how to tell the difference. Tae-ho sat in his small room, watching the clock count down to 2000 hours. His hands were shaking, his mouth was dry. He had changed his clothes 3 times, then realized it didn't matter. If she was going to kill him, it wouldn't matter what he was wearing. At 20:55, he stood up. At 20:58, he left his room. At 2100 exactly, he stood outside Commander Harin's quarters. The door slid open before he could knock. She was waiting for him. Tae-ho stepped inside, and the door closed behind him with a soft hiss. He was alone with the cold princess, and he had no idea if he would leave this room alive. Commander Harin's quarters were not what Tae-ho expected. He had imagined a dark, cold room with ice on the walls. Instead, it was simple and clean. White walls, minimal furniture, a large window showing the stars outside. The temperature was cold, much colder than the rest of the ship, but not unbearable. Harin stood near the window, her back to him. She was no longer wearing her uniform. Instead, she wore a simple silver dress that matched her skin. Her long white hair fell down her back like frozen water. She was beautiful, terrifyingly beautiful. Tae-ho stood near the door, afraid to move. He waited for her to speak. The silence stretched on and on. He could hear his own heartbeat. He could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines. He could hear absolutely nothing from her. Finally, she turned around. Do you know why you are here, human? Tae-ho swallowed hard. Because I touched you by accident. I am very sorry. The gravity shifted and I lost my balance, and I did not mean to. Stop. He stopped. Harin walked toward him slowly. Each step was measured and perfect. She stopped about 2 feet away from him. This close, he could feel the cold coming off her skin. It was like standing next to an open freezer. What do you know about Valorian customs regarding physical contact? I read some things. The database said that touching without permission is either an insult or a proposal. Correct. Her face remained expressionless. Do you know what my options are now? No, Commander. I have 2 choices under Valorian law. She held up one long silver finger. First, I can execute you. The touch was uninvited. It was inappropriate. I would be within my rights to freeze you where you stand. Your body would shatter into 1,000 pieces. No one would question my decision. Tae-ho felt his legs grow weak. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream. He wanted to wake up from this nightmare. Harin held up a second finger. Second, I can interpret your touch as a bonding petition. Under this interpretation, you were not insulting me. You were asking for the right to court me, to prove yourself worthy of being my mate. Tae-ho's brain stopped working. What? A bonding petition, Harin repeated, as if she was explaining something to a child. A formal request for a trial courtship. It lasts 90 cycles. During this time, you would be tested. If you pass, we would be bonded. If you fail, she paused. The failure is also death. So my choices are death now or death later. That depends on you. Taeho took a deep breath. His mind was racing. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. He had just wanted to fix some pipes. He had just wanted to do his job and go home someday. He had not wanted to accidentally propose to an alien princess who could freeze him solid with a touch. Why would you choose the second option? He asked carefully. You don't know me. You probably don't even like humans. Why not just execute me and be done with it? Harin's eyes narrowed slightly. For a moment, Taeho thought he saw something flicker in those ice-blue depths. Curiosity, maybe, or something else. Killing you would cause problems, she said. Humans are protected under coalition law. Your species is new to the galactic community. Executing one of you for an accident would create diplomatic difficulties. Admiral Baek Soo-yeon has already contacted me about this matter. Taeho felt a small wave of relief. Admiral Baek was a human diplomat stationed on the ship. She was smart and respected. If she was involved, maybe he had a chance. So you're choosing the courtship to avoid paperwork? It was a joke. A terrible, desperate joke. Taeho expected Harin to freeze him on the spot for his disrespect. Instead, she tilted her head slightly. Partially, she admitted, but there is another reason. What reason? Harin was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was slightly different, softer, almost uncertain. Humans interest me. Taeho blinked. We do? Your species is strange. You are weak. Your bodies are fragile. You have no natural weapons, no protective shells, no special abilities. You cannot survive in extreme temperatures. You cannot breathe underwater. You cannot regenerate lost limbs. She paused. And yet you survived. You conquered your planet. You spread across your solar system. You joined the coalition faster than any species in recorded history. We're stubborn, Taeho said weakly. You are more than stubborn. Harin took one step closer. The cold was intense now. Taeho could see his breath forming small clouds in the air between them. You are warm. Warm. Your body temperature. It is much higher than most species. Valorians are cold. Our skin freezes most organic matter on contact. But humans... She reached out and touched his cheek with one finger. It was cold. So cold it almost burned. But Taeho didn't pull away. He couldn't. He was frozen in place, not by ice, but by something else entirely. You don't freeze, she whispered. Your warmth fights back. Her finger lingered on his cheek for a moment. Then she pulled away and stepped back. Her face returned to its normal cold expression. You will be my intended for 90 cycles. You will face the trials of worthiness. You will prove yourself or you will fail. She turned back to the window. I expect you to fail. Humans are chaotic, undisciplined, emotional. You are everything Valorians are not. Then why? Because I want to see what happens. She looked back at him over her shoulder. I want to understand why your weak, warm, emotional species refuses to die. Consider it an experiment. Taeho stood there, unsure of what to say. He had walked into this room expecting execution. Instead, he had been given a chance. A small, terrifying, probably impossible chance. I'll do it, he heard himself say. Harin's eyebrow rose slightly. You accept? Just like that? You do not want time to consider? What's there to consider? It's this or death, and I don't want to die. Taeho straightened his shoulders. He tried to look confident, even though his knees were shaking. I'll do your trials. I'll prove myself. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. For a long moment, Harin simply stared at him. Then she nodded. Very well. The trials begin tomorrow. Rest while you can, human. She turned away completely. You will need it. Taeho left her quarters feeling dizzy. The door closed behind him, and he leaned against the wall for support. His hands were still shaking. His cheek still burned from where she had touched him. Jiwon was waiting in the corridor. His face was pale with worry. Well, are you alive? Obviously you're alive, you're standing here. But are you going to stay alive? Taeho laughed. It was a strange, hollow sound. I'm getting married, he said. Jiwon's jaw dropped. I'm getting married to an alien princess who can freeze me solid. And first, I have to pass a bunch of trials that will probably kill me, and she thinks I'm going to fail. And honestly, she's probably right. Taeho pushed himself off the wall and started walking toward his room. But I'm going to try anyway, because that's what humans do. Behind him, Ji-won stood in the corridor, speechless for the first time in his life. Tai-ho had to stand completely still for 6 hours. No movement, no talking, no scratching, no shifting his weight. A Valorian elder watched him the entire time, looking for any sign of weakness. For Valorians, this was easy. They could stand still for days. Their minds were calm and controlled. They did not feel boredom or restlessness. They simply existed, like statues of living ice. For Tai-ho, it was torture. After 1 hour, his legs began to ache. After 2 hours, his back was screaming. After 3 hours, his nose started to itch. It was the worst itch of his entire life. It felt like a tiny fire burning on the tip of his nose. Every part of his brain screamed at him to scratch it. He didn't scratch. He thought about other things. He thought about his mother's cooking back on Earth. He thought about the first time he saw the stars from space. He thought about Ha-Rin's finger touching his cheek, cold and burning at the same time. At the 5-hour mark, something terrible happened. A small fly landed on his face. It crawled across his cheek. It walked up to his eye. It sat on his eyelid, cleaning its tiny legs. Taeho wanted to cry. He wanted to scream. He wanted to slap the fly in two next week. He did nothing. The fly eventually flew away. The 6th hour ended. Taeho had passed. He collapsed immediately afterward. His legs gave out and he fell to the floor like a puppet with cut strings. 2 Valorian guards looked down at him with expressions that might have been confusion. "The human passed," one said to the other. "How unexpected." The second trial was the test of logic. Taeho was given a series of complex puzzles, mathematical problems, spatial reasoning tests, strategy games that Valorians had played for thousands of years. He was not good at them. Valorians processed information perfectly. Their minds worked like computers, analyzing every possibility, calculating every outcome. Taeho's mind was messier. He made mistakes. He guessed. He followed his gut instead of logic. He failed most of the puzzles. But something strange happened with the strategy games. Instead of playing the correct way, Taeho played unpredictably. He made moves that didn't make sense. He sacrificed important pieces for no apparent reason. He did things that no logical player would ever do. And somehow, he won. The Valorian game master stared at the board for a long time. "Your strategy is chaos," she said finally. "It should not work." "But it did work," Taeho said. "Yes." The game master's eye twitched. For a Valorian, this was practically a scream of frustration. "It did. I do not understand how." The third trial was the test of endurance. Taeho was placed in a cold chamber. The temperature was lowered slowly, degree by degree. He had to stay inside until he could no longer continue. The test measured how much physical suffering he could endure. For Valorians, cold was comfortable. They actually preferred temperatures that would kill most species. This test was designed to push other beings to their limits. Taeho lasted 47 minutes. It was not impressive by Valorian standards. Some of their warriors could stay in much colder temperatures for days, but for a human, it was remarkable. The previous record for a warm-blooded species was 12 minutes. When Taeho finally stumbled out of the chamber, his skin was blue and his teeth were chattering so hard he could barely speak. But he was alive. He had survived. Ha-Rin was waiting outside the chamber. 47 minutes, she said. There was something in her voice that might have been surprise. "Interesting." Thanks," Taeho managed through his shaking jaw. Can I have a bee blanket now?" The fourth trial almost killed him. It was called the test of emotion. The goal was simple. Do not show any emotion for 1 full day. No happiness, no sadness, no anger, no fear. Perfect emotional control. Valorians had practiced this since birth. Their entire society was built on suppressing feelings. Emotions were considered weaknesses, distractions from logical thought. Taeho tried. He really tried. He made it until lunch. Then Ji-won walked into the cafeteria and slipped on a wet floor. He fell flat on his face. his food flying everywhere, and let out a sound like a dying animal. Taiho laughed. He couldn't help it. It just happened. One moment he was sitting there with a blank face, and the next moment he was laughing so hard tears came out of his eyes. The trial was failed. That evening, Taiho sat in his room feeling like a failure. He had done so well on the other trials. He had pushed himself harder than he ever had before. But one stupid laugh had ruined everything. The door chimed. "Come in," he said, expecting Jiwon with some terrible attempt at comfort. It was not Jiwon. Harin stepped into his room. She had to duck slightly because the doorway was designed for human height. In the small space, she seemed even taller, even more impressive. "Commander?" Taiho stood up quickly. "I'm sorry. I know I failed the emotion test. I tried, I really did, but—" "The ship is in danger," Harin interrupted. Taiho stopped talking. "The main reactor is failing. Our engineers cannot determine the cause. The logical protocols are not working." She looked at him with those ice-blue eyes. "You are an engineer. You will help." It was not a question. 10 minutes later, Taiho was in the reactor room, surrounded by panicking aliens. Well, the aliens were not exactly panicking. They were standing very still and speaking in calm voices about how they were all going to die. But Taiho could feel the fear beneath their controlled expressions. The reactor was making a terrible sound. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Numbers on screens were going in very wrong directions. "We have tried everything," a Valorian engineer said. "Every logical solution has failed. The reactor should be working. All calculations say it should be working. But it is not working." Taiho looked at the reactor. He looked at the screens. He looked at the chaos around him. And then something strange happened. His heart started racing. His palms got sweaty. His mind began moving faster and faster, jumping from thought to thought like a wild animal. This was fear. This was panic. This was exactly what the Valorians had trained him to suppress. But instead of fighting it, Taiho let it take over. He moved without thinking. He ran to a panel that no one else was looking at. He ripped off the cover with his bare hands. Inside, he saw a tangle of wires and circuits. "What are you doing?" the Valorian engineer asked. "That panel is not related to the reactor core." "Trust me," Taiho said. He didn't know why he was doing this. It wasn't logical. It wasn't part of any protocol. It was just a feeling, a hunch, a wild guess based on nothing but instinct. He found a small wire that had come loose. It was tiny, almost invisible. None of the sensors had detected it because it was technically still connected. But Taiho could see it. He could feel that something was wrong. He pushed the wire back into place. The reactor noise stopped. The warning lights went dark. The screens showed normal numbers. The room was silent. "How did you know?" the Valorian engineer asked. His voice was shaking, which for a Valorian was like screaming in disbelief. Taiho stood up slowly. His hands were trembling. His heart was still racing. "I didn't know," he said honestly. "I just felt it." He turned around and found Harin standing in the doorway. She had watched the whole thing. Her face was as cold as ever, but something in her eyes had changed. "Interesting," she said softly. "Very interesting." That night, as Taiho lay in bed, he thought about what had happened. His emotional panic, his illogical instinct, had saved the ship. The Valorians' perfect logic had failed. His messy human feelings had succeeded. Maybe being emotional wasn't just a weakness. Maybe it was also a strength. After the reactor incident, things changed on the ship. The aliens looked at Taiho differently. Before, he had been just another human, a member of a strange and confusing species. Now he was the human who had saved them all with his illogical thinking. Some of them didn't like it. "It was luck," a Krellian officer said during dinner one night. "Humans are lucky, that is all. It is not a real skill." But others were curious. "How does your mind work?" a young Valorian asked Taiho in the corridor. "How do you think without logic? Does it hurt?" Taiho didn't know how to answer that question. Harin also changed. It was subtle. No one else would have noticed. But Taiho was spending so much time around her that he began to see the tiny differences. She started appearing in places where he happened to be. At first, Taiho thought it was coincidence. He would be working on repairs in a remote part of the ship, and Harin would walk by. He would be eating lunch alone, and she would sit at a nearby table. He would be reading in the observation deck, and she would appear to watch the stars. "Are you following me?" he asked one day. Haren's expression didn't change. "No, this ship has limited space. We are bound to encounter each other. You walked past me 7 times yesterday, in 7 different locations. The ship has many corridors. You were watching me sleep." Haren paused. "I was observing human sleep patterns. For research." Tejo wanted to argue, but arguing with a Valorian was like arguing with a wall. A very cold, very pretty wall. The official trials continued. Tejo passed some and failed others. His scores were not impressive by Valorian standards, but he survived each one. That alone seemed to surprise people. But the unofficial observations were more interesting. Haren began asking him questions. Strange questions that seemed to come from nowhere. "Why do humans smile?" she asked one day, while they were both in a lift. "Because we're happy," Tejo said, "or sometimes because we're nervous, or sometimes because we're being polite." "So a smile can mean many different things?" "Yes. That is confusing. That's humanity." Another day she asked, "Why do humans touch each other so often?" They were in the cafeteria. Across the room, Jiwan was slapping another engineer on the back, laughing about something. "It's how we connect," Taiho explained. "A pat on the back means friendship. A hug means comfort or love. A handshake means respect. Touch helps us feel close to each other." Hareen watched Jiwan for a long moment. "Valorians do not touch," she said quietly. "Our skin is too cold. We would harm each other." "That sounds lonely." Haren turned to look at him. Her ice blue eyes were unreadable. "We do not feel loneliness. We have suppressed it." "That sounds even more lonely." Haren said nothing, but she stayed at the table with him for another hour, asking more questions about human customs, human feelings, human connections. One evening, Taiho was fixing a broken light panel in a storage room when Haren found him. She stood in the doorway, watching him work. "Can I help you, Commander?" he asked without looking up. "I have a question." "Another one? You've asked me about 50 questions this week." 53, she corrected. Taiho smiled. "What's the question?" Haren was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, smaller, almost uncertain. "What is humor?" Taiho looked up from his work. "Humor, like jokes?" "Yes, I have observed that humans laugh frequently. You laugh at things that are not logically amusing. You laugh at danger, you laugh at failure. You laugh at each other. I do not understand it." Taiho set down his tools and turned to face her fully. "Humor is complicated. It's about surprise, I guess. When something unexpected happens, or when something doesn't make sense, we find it funny. It's a way of dealing with the chaos of life. But why laugh? Why not simply accept the unexpected? Because laughing feels good. It releases tension. It connects us with other people. When you laugh with someone, you feel closer to them." Haren considered this. "Valorians do not laugh. Our ancestors decided that humor was inefficient. It was suppressed, like all emotions." "When was the last time a Valorian laughed?" "Approximately 400 years ago." Taiho stared at her. 400 years without laughter. 400 years without joy. He couldn't imagine it. "That's really sad," he said. "Sadness is also suppressed." "Harin." It was the first time he had used her name without her title. She stiffened slightly but didn't correct him. "Have you ever wanted to laugh?" She didn't answer. Taiho had an idea. It was stupid. It was probably disrespectful. It was definitely going to fail. He did it anyway. "Hey," he said, "why don't scientists trust atoms?" Haren frowned. "What?" "Because they make up everything." Silence. Haren stared at him. Her face was completely blank. "That was a joke," Taiho explained. "Atoms make up everything physically, but makeup also means to lie. So it's a play on words." "I understand the structure," Haren said. "I do not understand why it is supposed to be funny." Okay. Let me try another one." Taiho thought for a moment. "What do you call a Valorian who shows emotion?" "I do not know." "An icebreaker." More silence. Then something happened. Haren's lips twitched. It was tiny, almost invisible. just a small movement at the corner of her mouth. But Taeho saw it. Did you just almost smile? He asked. Haren's eyes went wide. She touched her own face with her fingers, as if checking to make sure it was still under control. No, she said quickly. That was a muscle spasm, nothing more. It was a smile. You almost smiled at my terrible joke. Valorians do not smile. You just did. I did not. You definitely did. Haren turned and walked away quickly. Her steps were not as graceful as usual. She bumped into the doorframe slightly on her way out, something Tae-ho had never seen her do before. He stood there in the storage room, grinning like an idiot. He had almost made the cold princess laugh. Later that night, Tae-ho met with Admiral Bak Soo-yeon. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had been in the diplomatic service for 30 years and had seen things that most humans couldn't imagine. You're playing a dangerous game, she warned him over tea. Haren is not just any Valorian. She is from one of the highest families. Her people are watching this courtship very closely. I'm not playing any game, Tae-ho said. I'm just trying to survive. Are you? Soo-yeon looked at him carefully. Because it seems like you're doing more than surviving. It seems like you're actually trying to win. Tae-ho didn't know what to say to that. Be careful, Soo-yeon continued. No courtship between a human and a Valorian has ever succeeded. The gap between our species is too large. We feel too much. They feel too little. It has never worked. Maybe it's never worked because no one really tried. Soo-yeon smiled sadly. Maybe. Or maybe some gaps are too large to cross. She stood up and patted his shoulder. Just be careful, Tae-ho. I don't want to see you get hurt. That night, Tae-ho lay in bed thinking about Haren's almost smile. Such a small thing. Such a tiny crack in her icy armor. But it was a start. And humans, as the galaxy was learning, were very good at finding cracks and making them bigger. Not everyone was happy about the courtship. The Valorian High Council had been watching from their home world, and they did not like what they saw. A human courting one of their most respected commanders? It was embarrassing. It was shameful. It was a threat to everything they believed in. This must end, said Elder Bak Sung-jun during a secret meeting. He was old even by Valorian standards. His silver skin faded to dull gray. The human is corrupting her. I have received reports that she nearly displayed emotion. What kind of emotion? Another elder asked. Humor. She almost laughed. The room went silent with horror. This cannot continue, Sung-jun said. If she laughs, others will follow. The suppression we have maintained for 400 years will begin to fail. Our entire society is at risk. What do you suggest? Sang-jun's eyes were cold and empty. The human must be eliminated. Quietly. An accident will be arranged. On the ship, Tae-ho had no idea that his death had been ordered. He was too busy with the trials and his strange growing friendship with Haren. They had started having meals together. Not officially, Haren would simply appear wherever Tae-ho was eating and sit nearby. She claimed she was observing human eating habits, but Tae-ho noticed she never took notes. Do all humans eat this messily? She asked one day, watching him struggle with a bowl of noodles. These are difficult noodles, Tae-ho said defensively, wiping sauce from his chin. You have sauce on your nose. I know, and on your ear. How did it get on my ear? I do not know. I have never seen anyone eat with such chaos. Tae-ho looked at her. Was that a joke? Had the cold princess just made fun of him? Harin's face remained perfectly neutral, but there was something in her eyes, a tiny spark of warmth that hadn't been there before. The friendship was strange and difficult. Harin still didn't understand most human behaviors. She found jokes confusing, sarcasm impossible, and physical affection baffling. But she kept trying to learn. She kept asking questions. She kept appearing wherever Tae-ho happened to be. Ji-won noticed. She likes you, he said one night. The cold princess actually likes you. She's just studying me, like a science project. Tae-ho, I have never seen a Valorian voluntarily spend time with anyone. They're like cats, but colder and scarier. If she's choosing to be near you, it means something. The assassination attempt came on a quiet evening. Tae-ho was walking through a remote corridor on Deck 12. It was a maintenance area, rarely used. He was taking a shortcut back to his quarters after a late shift. He didn't see the attacker until it was almost too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, silver-skinned, Valorian, but not like Haran. This one's eyes were dead and empty. A professional killer. Human, the assassin said. Your courtship ends here. Tejo backed away slowly. His heart was pounding. He was no fighter. He had no weapons. He was going to die in this empty corridor, and no one would ever know what happened. The assassin raised his hand. Frost began forming in the air around his fingers. Valorians could freeze things with a touch, but the strong ones could project cold from a distance. This one was very strong. Wait, Tejo said desperately. Can we talk about this? There is nothing to talk about. Ice shot toward Tejo. He dove to the side, barely avoiding it. The ice hit the wall behind him, leaving a frozen crater. I'm not trying to cause trouble, Tejo shouted, scrambling to his feet. I didn't even mean to touch her. It was an accident. It does not matter. The assassin walked toward him slowly. You are changing her. The council cannot allow that. Another blast of ice. Tejo ran. He ducked behind a support pillar, but the cold was spreading through the metal. The entire corridor was becoming a freezer. You cannot hide, human. You cannot run. You are weak and warm and alone. Tejo closed his eyes. This was it. This was how he died. Not in battle, not as a hero. Just frozen to death by a political assassin because he had accidentally grabbed the wrong person's bottom. Then he heard a sound. It was like breaking glass, but deeper, sharper, more terrible. He opened his eyes. Haran stood at the end of the corridor. She was wearing her night clothes, her white hair loose around her shoulders. She must have come running the moment she sensed something wrong. And she was angry. Tejo had never seen an angry Valorian before. He didn't know it was possible. But Haran's eyes were blazing with cold fire. The air around her was crystallizing. Snowflakes formed from nothing and swirled around her like a frozen storm. You dare, she said to the assassin. Her voice was quiet, but it echoed through the corridor like thunder. You dare attack my intended. The assassin turned to face her. Commander Haran, the council has ordered. I do not care what the council has ordered. Haran moved. It was too fast for Tejo to follow. One moment she was at the end of the corridor. The next moment she was between him and the assassin. The fight was brutal and beautiful. Ice against ice. Cold against cold. The assassin was skilled, but Haran was something else entirely. She fought with a fury that Tejo had never seen, each movement precise and deadly. But the assassin was not alone. A second attacker emerged from the shadows. Then a third. They had sent multiple killers to make sure the job was done. Haran fought them all. She was magnificent. She was terrifying. She was a goddess of winter, her powers creating walls of ice and storms of frost. But 3 against 1 was too many, even for her. An ice spike caught her in the side. Haran gasped and stumbled. Dark blue blood spread across her silver skin. She fell to one knee, still fighting, still protecting Tejo. Run, she commanded him. Get help. I'm not leaving you. You will die. Then I'll die here, with you. Haran looked at him. For a moment her mask cracked completely. Surprise. Confusion. Something else that Tejo couldn't name. Then the ship's alarms went off. Security forces flooded the corridor. The assassins were captured within minutes. But Tejo didn't notice any of that. He was too busy kneeling beside Haran, pressing his hands against her wound, trying to stop the bleeding. You're going to be okay, he said. His hands were so cold they were burning, but he didn't let go. Help is coming. Just hold on. Your hands, Haran whispered. You should remove them. My blood is cold enough to cause damage. I don't care. Your fingers are turning white. I said I don't care. Haran stared at him. Her eyes were losing focus, but she forced herself to keep looking at his face. Why? She asked. Why would you risk yourself for me? Tejo didn't have to think about the answer. Because you're worth it. They stayed like that until the medical team arrived. Tejo held Haran's hand the entire time, even as his own fingers began to go numb. Even as ice crystals formed on his skin. Even as the cold burned through him like fire, he held on. Later in the medical bay, A doctor examined Tae-ho's hands with disbelief. You held her for 2 hours, the doctor said. 2 hours of direct contact with Valorian blood. Your fingers nearly developed severe cold damage. Any longer, and we would have had to remove them. Are they okay now? Yes. With treatment, they will fully recover. The doctor shook his head. But I do not understand. Why would you do this? Why would you risk permanent injury for someone not of your species? Tae-ho looked through the window at Ha-rin, who was resting in the next room. Her eyes were closed. Her silver skin was pale from blood loss. But she was alive. Because that's what humans do, he said. We hold on, even when it hurts, even when it's dangerous. He smiled slightly. Even when it doesn't make any logical sense. The doctor had no response to that. That night, Ha-rin woke briefly. She saw Tae-ho sitting beside her bed, his bandaged hands resting on his lap. You stayed, she whispered. Of course. Your hand. They'll be fine. The doctor said so. Ha-rin was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, vulnerable, real. I am tired, she said. Tired of being cold. Tired of feeling nothing. Tired of the ice inside me. She reached out and touched his bandaged hand gently. You are warm. So warm. I have never felt anything like it. Ha-rin, I do not know what this feeling is. I do not know what to call it. But I do not want it to stop. Her ice-blue eyes found his. Is that strange? Tae-ho took her cold hand in his warm ones. No, he said softly. That's not strange at all. That's human. Ha-rin's eyes closed, but she was smiling. A tiny smile. A real smile. For the first time in 400 years, a Valorian smiled while falling asleep. The assassination attempt had failed, but the council was not finished. Elder Sang-jun was furious. His assassins had been captured. His plan had been exposed. And worst of all, Ha-rin had defended the human. She had fought for him. She had nearly died for him. This was worse than anyone had imagined. She is lost, Sang-jun said at an emergency council meeting. The human has corrupted her completely. We must take drastic action. What do you propose? Another elder asked. Sang-jun smiled coldly. The final trial, the ritual of proving. Let the human face her in combat. When he fails, as he surely will, the courtship ends. No more diplomatic problems, no more embarrassment. Just tradition. The message arrived on the eternal frost 3 days later. Tae-ho read it 5 times, hoping he had misunderstood. He had not. The final trial is ritual combat, Admiral Suyon explained grimly. You must face Ha-rin in the Valorian style. No weapons, just your body against hers. But she can freeze me with a touch, Tae-ho said. She can create ice from nothing. I'm just a human engineer. How is this fair? It's not about fairness. Valorians don't believe in winning through violence. The trial is about resolve, about proving you are worthy by showing you will not give up, no matter what. What's the passing requirement? Suyon hesitated. You must survive for 10 minutes. Tae-ho laughed. It was not a happy laugh. 10 minutes against a Valorian commander? That's impossible. The record for a non-Valorian is 3 minutes. Most don't last more than 30 seconds. Tae-ho sat down heavily. His legs felt weak. Everything felt weak. Ha-rin found him that evening on the observation deck. He was staring at the stars, not really seeing them. You heard about the trial, she said. Yes. Ha-rin sat down beside him. She was still recovering from her wounds, moving more slowly than usual. You do not have to do this, she said quietly. You can withdraw from the courtship. The council cannot force you to fight. What happens if I withdraw? The courtship ends. You return to your normal duties. We never speak of this again. Tae-ho looked at her. In the starlight, she was beautiful. Cold and distant and impossibly beautiful. Is that what you want? He asked. Ha-rin was silent for a long moment. What I want is irrelevant. What matters is your survival. You cannot win this fight, Tae-ho. I do not want to hurt you, but the trial has rules. I must fight at full strength. I must try to defeat you. And I will defeat you, quickly and completely. Then I'll lose. You will die. No one survives 10 minutes against a Valorian in combat. Your body cannot handle the cold. Your reflexes are too slow. Your strength is insufficient. Her voice cracked slightly. I cannot watch you die. Taeho reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cold, but he was used to it now. It felt familiar, almost comfortable. I'm not going to withdraw, he said. Taeho, I've spent my whole life being told what I can't do. Humans can't survive in space. Humans can't work on alien ships. Humans can't court Valorians. He squeezed her hand gently. And maybe all of that is true. Maybe I'll fail. Maybe I'll die in that arena. But I'd rather die trying than live knowing I gave up. Haran stared at him. Her ice-blue eyes were bright with something that might have been tears if Valorians could cry. You are the most illogical person I have ever met, she whispered. I know. It's a human thing. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Taeho trained every day. Ji-won helped him practice dodging and moving. Admiral Su-yan taught him what she knew about Valorian combat styles. Even some of the alien crew members offered advice. Valorians attack in patterns, a Krellian engineer told him. They are logical. They do not improvise. If you can break their rhythm, you might survive longer. Stay low, a four-armed fighter suggested. They are tall. Their attacks come from above. Make yourself a small target. When you feel the cold spreading, keep moving, a medical officer advised. Movement generates heat. The moment you stop moving, you freeze. Taeho absorbed everything. He trained until his body ached. He studied until his mind was exhausted. He prepared as much as any human could prepare. It wasn't enough. He knew it wasn't enough. But it was all he could do. The night before the trial, Haran came to his quarters. She stood in the doorway, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. I came to say goodbye, she said, in case tomorrow is the end. Taeho let her in. They talked for hours, about their lives, about their hopes, about the strange path that had led them from an accidental touch to this moment. Haran spoke about her childhood, about the cold expectations of her family, about the loneliness she had never been allowed to acknowledge. Taeho spoke about Earth, about warm summers and autumn leaves, about his mother's cooking and his father's bad jokes, about the human capacity for love and laughter and the stubborn, foolish hope. As dawn approached, Haran stood to leave. Taeho, she said at the door, whatever happens tomorrow, I am glad I met you. You have shown me things I never knew existed, feelings I never thought possible. She touched his face gently, her cold fingers leaving frost on his skin. You have made me warm. Then she was gone. The arena was massive. It was located on a Valorian station, specially transported for the trial. Thousands of Valorians filled the stands, their silver faces expressionless. Representatives from other species were present too, including a human delegation led by Admiral Su-yan. Taeho stood in the center of the arena, wearing simple combat clothes. He had no armor, no weapons, just his own fragile human body. Across from him, Haran stood in ceremonial fighting robes. Her white hair was tied back. Her face was a mask of ice. But her eyes were sad. Elder Sangjun's voice echoed through the arena. The ritual of proving shall now begin. The human Kang Taeho challenges for the hand of Commander Yoon Harin. He must survive 10 minutes of combat to prove his worth. The trial begins. Now. Haran moved. She was faster than anything Taeho had ever seen. One moment she was across the arena. The next moment her fist was an inch from his face. He barely dodged. The cold from her swing brushed past him like a winter wind. If she had connected, he would have been frozen instantly. Taeho rolled away and scrambled to his feet. His heart was pounding. His entire body was screaming at him to run. But there was nowhere to run. Only the arena. Only the fight. Haran attacked again. And again. And again. Ice formed in her hands, shooting toward him in deadly shards. The ground beneath his feet turned slippery with frost. The air itself seemed to freeze. Taeho dodged. He ducked. He dove. He ran. He did everything he could to stay away from her attacks. The crowd watched in silence. No one expected him to last long. 1 minute passed. Taeho was still standing. Barely. His clothes were covered in frost. His breath came in painful gasps, but he was still moving. 2 minutes. Haran's attacks grew fiercer. She created walls of ice to trap him. She summoned blizzards to blind him. She was not holding back. She could not hold back. The rules demanded her full strength. Tae-ho felt the cold seeping into his bones. His fingers were numb. His feet were slow. Every movement was harder than the last. 3 minutes. He had matched the record. The crowd murmured. This was unexpected. 4 minutes. Tae-ho stumbled. An ice shard caught his arm, cutting through his sleeve and drawing blood. The wound immediately froze, the blood turning to ice crystals. He kept moving. 5 minutes. Halfway there. His body was failing. His vision was blurring. The cold was everywhere now, inside him, around him, becoming him. But he kept moving. 6 minutes. 7 minutes. 8 minutes. The crowd was no longer silent. Valorians were standing, leaning forward, unable to believe what they were seeing. A human, a simple, weak, warm human, was surviving their most brutal trial. 9 minutes. Tae-ho couldn't feel his legs anymore. He was moving on pure willpower. His body had given up long ago. Only his spirit remained. Harin stopped attacking. She stood before him, her chest heaving with exertion. Frost covered her skin. Ice crystals hung in her hair. She had given everything she had, and he was still standing. 10 minutes, she whispered, her voice breaking. You only need 10 minutes. Tae-ho looked at her through blurred eyes. I know, he said, but I'm not done yet. The buzzer sounded. 10 minutes and 4 seconds. Tae-ho smiled at Harin. I'm still here. Then he collapsed. The arena erupted, not with cheers. Valorians didn't cheer. But something happened that was even more remarkable. They stood. Every Valorian in the arena rose to their feet, a gesture of respect, a gesture that had not been given to a non-Valorian in the entire history of their species. On the arena floor, Harin fell to her knees beside Tae-ho. For the first time in her life, she wept. Her tears were ice crystals, falling from her eyes like snow landing on his frozen face. You impossible human, she cried. You stubborn, illogical, beautiful human. Tae-ho was unconscious, but somehow he was still smiling. He had done it. Against all odds, against all logic, against everything the universe said was possible. He had done it, because that's what humans do. They simply do not quit. Tae-ho woke up 3 days later. The first thing he saw was white. White ceiling, white walls, white light. For a moment he thought he might be dead. Heaven, he imagined, would probably be very white. Then he felt the pain, and he knew he was alive. Everything hurt. His arms, his legs, his chest. Even his hair seemed to hurt, which he didn't know was possible. His entire body was wrapped in warming blankets, tubes running into his arms, machines beeping softly around him. You're awake. He turned his head slowly. Harin was sitting beside his bed. She looked different, softer. There were dark circles under her eyes as if she hadn't slept in days. How long? He croaked. 3 days. The doctors were not sure you would survive. Your body temperature dropped to dangerous levels. Your heart stopped twice. Her voice trembled slightly. I thought I had killed you. Tae-ho tried to smile, but his face was too stiff. Takes more than a little cold to kill me. It was not a little cold. It was extensive cold. You experienced severe hypothermia, multiple cold injuries, and organ stress. Harin's hands were clenched in her lap. The doctors said any other species would have died within the first 3 minutes. Good thing I'm human then. Harin looked at him. Her ice blue eyes were bright with emotion. Not just one emotion, many emotions. Too many to count. Why did you do it? She asked. You could have withdrawn. You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you. Why did you risk everything? Tae-ho thought about the question. He thought about the accident in the corridor. He thought about the strange courtship. He thought about the laughter and the tears and the endless cold. He thought about Harin's smile when she thought no one was watching. Because some things are worth freezing for, he said simply. Harin made a sound that might have been a sob, or a laugh, or both. You are impossible, she said. Completely and utterly impossible. I know, you keep telling me. The door opened and Ji-won burst in, followed by Admiral Su-yeon and several other crew members. They crowded around his bed, talking over each other, asking questions, expressing relief. You crazy man, Ji-won shouted. 10 minutes and 4 seconds. You beat the record by 7 minutes. The entire ship is talking about you, Suyon said, smiling warmly. You've become something of a legend. The Krellian engineer won't stop telling everyone about the human who fought a Valorian commander and survived, another crew member added. Tae-ho listened to all of it in a daze. He was too tired to process most of it, but one thing caught his attention. What about the council, he asked. What about Elder Sang-jun? The room went quiet. Soo-yun's expression became serious. The assassination attempt has been exposed. Evidence was found linking Sang-jun directly to the plot. The council has stripped him of his position. He will face trial for attempted murder. And the courtship? Harin spoke. Her voice was clear and strong. The council has no choice but to recognize the bond. You completed the ritual of proving. By Valorian law, you have earned the right to be my mate. She paused. If you still want that. Everyone in the room turned to look at Tae-ho. He looked at Ha-rin, the cold princess, the woman who had tried to freeze him, tried to defeat him, tried to push him away at every turn, the woman who had also protected him, taught him, and slowly, carefully, let him into her frozen heart. Yeah, he said, I still want that. Harin's face transformed. It was small at first, just a slight softening around her eyes. Then her lips curved upward. Not a tiny twitch this time, not an almost smile, a real, full, beautiful smile. The room gasped. Did she just smile? Ji-won whispered loudly. The cold princess just smiled. Actually smiled, with teeth and everything. Harin didn't seem to notice the reaction of others. She was looking only at Tae-ho. Then we are bonded, she said. From this day forward, in accordance with Valorian tradition and galactic law, you are mine and I am yours. Forever? Tae-ho asked. Forever. The bonding ceremony was held 1 week later, after Tae-ho had recovered enough to stand. It took place on the observation deck of the Eternal Frost. With the stars as witnesses, humans and Valorians stood side by side. Other species filled the remaining space. It was the most diverse gathering the ship had ever seen. Harin wore a dress of silver and white, her hair flowing freely around her shoulders. Tae-ho wore a simple black suit that Ji-won had helped him find. They stood facing each other, hands clasped together, his warm, hers cold, somehow perfectly balanced. The ceremony was simple. Valorians did not believe in long speeches or elaborate rituals. They exchanged vows, promising to stand together through warmth and cold, through logic and emotion, through all the challenges that lay ahead. When it was time for the traditional kiss, the room held its breath. Valorians did not kiss. Their touch was too cold for most species. A kiss from a Valorian could cause serious injury. But Tae-ho leaned forward anyway. Their lips met, cold and warm, ice and fire. Different and yet somehow the same. It was not a long kiss. It could not be. Already Tae-ho could feel the frost forming on his lips. But it was enough. When they separated, both of them were smiling. The crowd erupted into applause. Humans cheered. Some aliens made noises that might have been their version of cheering. Even a few Valorians nodded in approval, which was practically an explosion of emotion for them. Later that night, after the celebrations had ended and the guests had departed, Tae-ho and Harin stood alone on the observation deck. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and eternal. What happens now? Tae-ho asked. I have made a decision, Harin said. I will not return to my home world, not yet. Instead, I will study humans. I will learn about your warmth, your emotions, your capacity for feeling, and I will bring that knowledge back to my people. You want to change them? I want to give them a choice. For 400 years, Valorians have lived in suppression. We have told ourselves that emotions are weakness, but you have shown me something different. She turned to face him. You have shown me that emotions are strength, that warmth is power, that feeling is not a flaw, but a gift. Tae-ho took her hands in his. It won't be easy. Change is hard, especially for people who have been the same for so long. I know, but I am not alone. She squeezed his hands gently. I have you, the warmest, most stubborn, most illogical human in the galaxy. Is that a compliment? It is the highest compliment I know how to give. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Two beings from different worlds, different species, different temperatures. Everything said they should not work. Everything said they were too different, but they had proven everything wrong. Far across the galaxy, on a Valorian research station, a young scientist was writing a paper. She had watched the broadcasts of the ritual of proving. She had seen the human stand against a Valorian commander for 10 minutes. She had seen him smile at the end, even as he collapsed. She had never seen anything like it. The paper was titled Humanity, a Species of Impossible Warmth. It explored the strange qualities that made humans unique. Their stubbornness, their emotional depth, their refusal to accept defeat even when defeat was certain, their capacity to change others simply by being near them. The paper would eventually spread throughout Valorian society. It would spark debates. It would challenge traditions. It would slowly, carefully begin to thaw 400 years of ice. But that was still in the future. For now, on the observation deck of the Eternal Frost, Tae-ho and Ha-rin simply stood together, warm and cold, human and Valorian. Two hearts beating in different rhythms, yet somehow in perfect harmony. "I love you," Tae-ho said. It was the first time he had said those words to her. Ha-rin looked at him. Her ice-blue eyes were soft, warm, even. "I do not fully understand what love is," she admitted. "It is not a concept my people recognize. But I know that when I am near you, I feel complete. I feel alive. I feel warm." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "If that is love, then yes, I love you too." Tae-ho smiled and wrapped his arm around her. The cold seeped through his clothes, but he didn't mind. He had learned to love the cold, because the cold came with her. Outside the window, the stars continued to burn, ancient and eternal, witnesses to countless stories across countless worlds. But this story was special. This was the story of how a clumsy human engineer accidentally touched the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time, and somehow, against all odds, found the love of his life. This was the story of warmth melting ice, of emotion defeating logic, of feeling conquering numbness. This was a human story, and like all human stories, it ended not with cold perfection, but with warm, messy, beautiful hope. The end.